going to host? Is someone going to present? Or do I have to do that too?
G'day, guys. You are listening to the Old World Behemoths. No, you do it.
You got to do it, mate. You have to host it, but when you share the screen, copyright strike.
Straight away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to, what are we, episode
5?
Episode 5, wow, of the Old World Behemoths. It's gone like you wouldn't believe. My name is Alistair. I am a behemoth because I took a dragon to a 1,500-point tournament, whack, which we'll talk about today. Tom, did I do this last time? I felt like I did. Tom, why are you a behemoth?
I'm a behemoth because I'm a large man that's not afraid to show his emotions, and my God, what an emotional week it's been.
This is not a Star Wars episode.
What an emotional week it's been. Andor ruined me. I was literally on the way here. I don't know if you guys can hear my husky voice.
Before Tom,
and I haven't stopped sobbing.
The Old World Behemoths podcast into the Andor podcast. Chris, you're a behemoth. Why?
Because I play ogres, and I
Fabulous.
think I'm 0.1 of a point in the lead right now.
As we'll talk to
Fine,
the
Tom.
very, very important topic. And Alex, you're a behemoth. Why are you a behemoth?
Well, first of all, you do this every week. You did do it last time. And I'm a behemoth because Andor ended this week. Guys, we're
Jesus
never going to
fucking
emotionally
Christ.
recover from this. We're
Never.
never going to emotionally recover from this.
I will never
The
be
Old
the
World
same.
podcast is over. From now on, it's Andor discussions only.
Jesus.
Andor
All right.
respect.
Well, welcome everyone to the Andor recap podcast. Okay, we've got an interesting lineup for you tonight, including some things that we haven't done before. A slightly different segment, about halfway through, which we'll get to. But for the most part, we're going to talk a little bit about the Wood Elf Arcane Journal. If you have not been living under a rock, you've obviously seen that a few of our other podcasting peers have gotten their hands on the Arcane Journal and shared some previews of what that looks like. So we're going to get into that. And then we're going to have a big important discussion, which we're absolutely going to clickbait title this episode on. We're going to talk about comp and hobby and whack, which is going to be really interesting. But before we do that, next slide, please, Chris. Thanks to our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to become a supporter for us on Patreon, you'll find the link in the show notes that you can use. But otherwise, thank you, Death1942, Ghost, Joshua, Sick, Silver Dave, and Jeff. You help us keep producing these podcasts on a semi-regular basis. And of course, thank you to 25 Creative and the fabulous work that you're doing to help us look pretty and stay pretty. Who wants to talk about the Arcane Journal?
Well, let's also... Chris, go.
So we've scoured the internet for the highest quality images that we can find in traditional Warhammer styling to take it on a Nokia 3000 or whatever the hell it was. Somehow someone's still got one running.
The first camera phone of all time.
Yeah. So you can definitely make out some things here. But no, we have actually scoured the internet for actual
The potato phone.
real photos. Just to, I guess, lead this off, we're not doing an in-depth review. Other channels have done that. They do it better than us. We're not really about that. We're kind of just going to give you like a high-level overview, talk about some particular like things to, I guess, keep an eye out on in this Arcane Journal. And most of this information comes from the Square-based video, which has all of the information in there. I'm sure there's other reviewers out there who have already done the review as well. So go to your favorite hobby channel and get the full rundown if that's what you're interested in.
Man reads book style.
Correct.
Mountain Miniature's got one, etc., and a few others. I think it's important to point out, who was it last episode that put their reputation on the line to say that Beastman was next?
Was it you?
I feel like
It was
you.
me.
Yeah.
It was me. I even had the image up, and then we had. I think we did that episode, and literally the next morning, literally an alarm icon was put on the Warhammer Discord to say it switched. to Wood Elves, and I thought, I'm never going to live this down. I'm never going to live it down. But it's a pleasant surprise to have any old world army come, because we're closer to Kislev.
In
Yuck.
2028.
Okay, what are the two armies?
Am I running this, the whole thing?
May as well.
All right. So you've got, as with all arcane journals, you've got two new. Are they called Armies of Infamy? Is that what they're called? Yeah. You gain new units and two new armies to run in the Wood Elf kind of sub faction. Kind of mix and match certain things. So the first one is you got Orion's army. This can be an all cav army, which is pretty cool to be honest. You get no tree stuff, so no dryads, no dearth.
It's like a wild host sort of vibe.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the theme is like the wild hunt is being run, and he's meant to be a very mobile kind of hit and run kind of character. So no trees, no level 4 wizard, which if we had those...
Every army of infamy has one. Every book that comes out,
it always has. We'll just call it the bad army. Every book has the bad army, and look, no level 4 is a good indication of which one's the bad one. And the theme is they hunt monsters, so there's a few rules around that, a few bonuses that they can get around hunting monsters. Your other army of infamy is the Host of Talzin. There's a couple of new units in this one. This can be tree heavy, which is really cool. It is mostly a mix though of elves and trees, I guess. Very limited on the cav, and you can give ambushes to the trees. So I would say that this is just a skew Wood Elf list where it leans a little bit more into the trees. It gives you some interesting new units to look at, but it does take away some of your options. So I guess the Bretonian one, the Exiles, it's kind of similar along that vein where it's like it's just a slightly different way of playing Wood Elves.
It's unfortunate though, because ambushes, the special rule ambushes, has not really made an impact thus far in the old world. So it'd be kind of cool if they get, maybe they can ambush or reroll the ambush roll or charge off the ambush or something.
I think on that point, if you ever see ambushes as a rule on a unit, if you have no way of manipulating that roll, in general, it is not a great rule because it means that unit potentially is off the board for multiple turns before it comes on. I believe Beastmen have a way of manipulating that roll, so their ambush is a bit better. But yeah, it's not the strongest.
Yeah, they could blow the beast horn, and Wolves of the Sea can bring a character which can manipulate the ambush, but you're investing points. I always feel like if you're going to give ambushes to the Treekin in any type of form, it really should have been scout into a forest with no minimum distance. At all.
Kind of like
that would have been
the Great Knight, right?
Yeah. Also, trust Alex to be the one that says "blow the beast horn." That's just so fitting.
So the next exciting thing out of this arcane journal is we have a new spell law, Law of the Wilds. This is a full spell law, so we've got a signature and we've got 6 spells. It looks very solid. I'd say there's probably 3 really strong spells in there, but they all kind of had their own play. We will go over this a bit later in this episode. Magic items, on the most part, pretty much the same as all the other arcane journals. Very pricey for a lot of items. There are some standouts which are good. It's worth noting that almost all of these can be taken in just general across all 3 of the Wood Elf armies. There's only, I think, 2 or 3 items that are actually restricted, which is nice. And then we get on to the most exciting part of this arcane journal, which is the new units. So you've got, I'm going to butcher all of these names, Araloth. He's basically a Glade Lord stand-in. I believe he's 10 points cheaper than a regular Glade Lord. Obviously,
sort of like the Lothern character or the Lothern or the Crate. Is it called Crate? The lion people from High Elves?
Oh, Thrace.
Crate. What am I talking about? That's a real place, right?
The crepe paper lions.
The crepe people. Yeah. So he's got some interesting rules. Sorry. The Warden of Talzin sits between a hero and a lord So it's slightly better than a hero, but not as good as a lord. It's got some stubborn and immune to psych possibilities in conjunction with the other new units, which is cool. Guardians of Talzin, I've written here a Sydney Mortgage is cheaper. These guys are 18 points per model.
A pop.
with
They-
19 with shields, I believe.
Well, before we get to that, they have a interesting new rule called parry, which speculation is that might come into the next edition of the game as just base. Parry is if you have a shield and a hand weapon or
Hand
a
weapon.
spear. Basically, if you can use the shield in combat, you get +1 to your save. So for 19 points a model, you can get, I believe, down to a 4-up save.
Ooh, and
Yep.
no rerolls or anything like that.
No,
But I guess
no
you're
rerolls.
elves, so you're probably striking super quick. Parry used to
Yeah.
be, just jog my memory, in 8th edition, it used to give you a 6+ ward save. Is that
Yes,
correct?
but it was only hand weapon and a shield, and it also
Right.
couldn't be used against attacks that would double your strength.
Okay,
Yes,
interesting.
but in 6th edition, it is this rule.
Right.
that we're
okay.
looking
I
at
like
here.
the +1 to
Interesting.
save. That's
I think
nice.
it's
I mean,
really
that
nice. I
goes a long way
yeah.
against the lack of strength 4 being AP1,
Yeah.
etc., etc. That's
I will
And
also
I think they get it with
yeah.
their spear too, Chris. Right, like specifically the Azrai spear.
Yeah, there's a couple of units with parry in this Arcane Journal, and I think the weapon might be different on each one to gain the parry. But either way, I think this is an awesome rule that they should roll out elsewhere. I feel like one of the big problems with like big infantry blocks right now is they don't really have a lot of support rules-wise to run them. This is an example of a rule that would be perfect to roll out to, I'm going to say, every basic infantry unit in the game, and I see no issue really with giving out +1 armor save.
not to derail it though. Is that
Yeah.
enough for what infantry need?
It's
Because realistically,
probably not.
Yeah, so I think I don't remember. I apologize as to whether you pointed out parry. Parry applies in combat only, so it's
Yes.
not against ranged attacks that they're getting an additional +1 to their armor save. So I think it is an interesting thing that's brought up around this being applying to the remaining armies or being introduced as a battlefield standard, purely because it really does have enormous impacts on the survivability of shield armed infantry as opposed to halberd or great weapon infantry. And it also has an outsized impact on core supported factions as opposed to legacy factions. You will point out, I'm sure, ogres, which would never count as having a shield, right? So there's no opportunity for you to introduce it. There's Iron Fists, and we know that there's stuff there, but I feel like it's an interesting concept. I feel maybe they're trying to see what the community reaction would be or how it impacts play. But then from everything else that we're hearing, nothing that is introduced in the Arcane Journals is introduced in the sake of balance. It's all just flavor. It's all vibe.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and also introducing a rule like this on a 19-point block per model of infantry, you're not really going to be able to see a widespread impact of that on the table. It will be interesting as sort of a Death Star style, but the Death Stars aren't really
We
having a problem
will
anyway.
touch upon it a little bit when we get to the Lore of the Wild section of this, but there is ways you could run a big block of these Guardians of Talzin. You could chuck in that Warden of Talzin, and you could build a little bit of a Death Star with a couple of buff spells to back you up. It's still probably a little bit pricey for what it does.
sure.
All right,
Chris, there is one thing you missed on the slide, which was the kindreds.
Kindreds.
Yes.
Oh yes, like the
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now the key thing here, and you're gonna have to correct me if I am terribly incorrect, but they are introduced basically as like big names, right? Like big ogre
What's
names.
the
or
high
marks
off
of
one
chaos.
called? Because it's basically
Honors.
exactly that. Yeah.
high off honors.
Honors. But this is interesting because now Wood Elf characters have 3 levels of items to access. They have magic items. They have their
Sprites.
sprites, and now they have this, and they're not. It's only one. Like the big names for ogres, you can only take one, and nothing's game breaking. But a lot of them, I would say, is perhaps changing how you might take items. I think everyone's now super excited about the bear
Mhm.
1, which gives +1 strength, +1 toughness to your character.
Wow.
Which for an elf is
That's
Pretty
massive.
solid.
yeah,
I will say
pretty
though
solid.
that I'm almost certain that I put it on a later slide, so we can talk about it a bit more when we get there.
All right.
Checkmate,
Well,
Alex.
Yep.
let's have
Yep.
a look at the Law of the Wilds.
Sorry, can I just get to the last 2 units
No.
on this page?
No, you can't.
The Big O himself, Orion, is in this book.
He's back.
He
455 points.
He is
I called it.
not cheap man. There is
Cetra level, I think I said.
Yeah, there's some shenanigans with. So he's got ethereal dogs. He's got 2 ethereal dogs. They've only got 1 wound each. I believe they're toughness 4. You can probably do some tricky plays with that in order to make him sort of worth 455 points. But I got to be honest, it's a hard sell.
I do feel like they're. So for conventional shooting, we know that when you shoot at a unit that has less than 5 rank and file models and there's a character in that unit, you split attacks between the unit and the character, and it's basically after you've assigned 1 to each model, it's a 50-50 split. So ultimately, anything shooting at him halves the number of hits that it ultimately ends up with. There's conjecture around whether with the cannon fire you can assign the cannon hit when they overlap Orion as opposed to the dogs. You can assign the cannon hit to the dogs. I'm not convinced that that's an approach, but then the canon rules are written so poorly
They're not
that
great.
He's definitely going to need either tournament FAQs. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to trust GW to actually write a proper FAQ for him. Your local TO is probably going to have to come up with stuff. It's effectively it's a unit with 2 different, profiles in it: Orion and the 2 dogs. As I said, the reason why I've written there's shenanigans available is because until you get some of those rulings and it's a bit clearer, you can do some tricky stuff with this.
Sure.
Yeah. And then the final
Is he
unit.
A wizard? Real quick.
No,
Is he
he's not.
leveled?
No, he's just
But he does
for
heal back.
455.
He does heal back wounds.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the final unit, and unfortunately probably the worst unit, is the Wood Elf Beast Packs. There is, I think, 2 pages minimum of rules for these things. Don't do it, okay? Just don't read the page. Just pretend it doesn't exist. Pretend the models don't exist, because good lord, they are awful. Just move on with your life.
But you can't even, unless I've got this wrong again, can you take the beasts separately, or do you have to take the Beastmaster and then take
So each Beastmaster unlocks a number of beasts, but I believe all of the beasts have to be of the same type within the unit.
What the point being is that, like, if I could get a bear running around just by himself,
you
without
can.
the
Well,
Beastmaster.
no, you have to have a Beastmaster.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right, is that it seems like you're paying tax. So I don't know what happened there.
I don't know.
It's literally like a bunch of tabby cats running around the forest at strength 3, toughness 3, somehow weapon skill 4. But like that one, Chris? Weapon skill 4 cats.
Yeah, my favorite. Animals that outfight ogres. This is my
Sabertusks are actually the best fighters in the whole book, which is crazy.
Can someone else take the lead on this, please?
Sure.
Law of the Wilds. Signature spell, Swirling Mists. Enchantment. It casts on yourself, and basically until the next start of turn subphase, any enemy models directing shooting attacks against the caster or unit they joined must reroll 2 hit rolls of a 6.
Very
Could be
insane.
pretty good. I mean, that could be quite. Yeah, exactly. Like that's really good against protecting your big units of dragons, etc.
I do feel like it lasts until your next start of turn subphase. Now, Tom, as an ogre player, how do you feel about spells? And I'm not going to name names here of which spells last until the next start of turn subphase, but is it good that it's going to last until your next start of turn subphase? Does that make this a better spell than, I don't know, is it Toothcracker?
Marginally.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of this is that if you face up against a roster that is heavy on the poison or heavy on the, I can take down your dragon very quickly with poison or whatever have you, Just being able to switch out for this is very strong, and provides a level of insurance that you wouldn't otherwise see. So, props to this spell. You don't have to take it every turn or every game. I just think this is really good to have.
I'm a bit confused as to why it's cast on an 8+. It doesn't feel like it's that impactful for an 8. It probably could have been a bit cheaper.
No, I think I mean maybe you're spoiled by not having a huge amount of shooting, but the bulk of the bulk of shooting armies that spend a lot of time on shooting, you're seeing lots of 5s and 6s to hit.
Yeah.
And if you're forcing rerolls on 6s, it's actually massively impactful.
That's
you
true.
also have to think about poison. So I played Pete yesterday, and a lot of his damage is done by skinks that roll up to you, throw a bunch of javelins in your face, and just rely on poison in order to do a lot of that damage. That now goes away.
And I mean, enchantments are some of the strongest in the game because you can cast them in combat. So that's massive.
Well, the range self ones can be. But
that's what I mean. Yep.
Yes.
Hit up the next one, Alistair.
Fury of Athalloran, magic missile, 10+ to cast 18-inch range. The most expensive magic missile, I believe, in the game so far. The enemy suffers D3 +1 strength, 6 hits with AP -2, and the big one, multi-wound 2. So we're looking at a 10+ to cast multi-shot bolt thrower, effectively.
AP2 is nuts. That's incredible.
Auto hit bolt thrower.
Yeah, so it's quite strong. I feel like we're going to see Warhawks with Warhawk casters with this potentially rolling around and stabbing away at big multi-wound units.
Yeah. Are any of the dragons toughness 6?
Most of the dragons are
most
toughness
of them.
6.
Right, okay.
The middle and top tier ones, I think, are.
No, only
the D3 +1.
Is it the sun?
No, Sun Dragon is toughness 5, so is the Moon Dragon, also toughness 5. But only the top tier
one then.
Only the top tier.
That could be real nasty against dragons.
I think it's nasty against any
multi-wound too. But yeah, the D3 +1 strength 6 is nuts, and that's just going to decimate. Mournfang, bye bye. What are the demigryphs? That's fantastic against them. The AP2 is unreal. Big props to this.
Dragon ogres. Same thing, right? They're 4 wounds, which means you're not wasting shots against dragon
toughness
ogres.
4 as well, right?
I'm imagining
the strength 6 on this is incredible.
Yeah,
a massive tree,
just
going
flung
across the battlefield.
Cool.
Very good, very good.
Ariel's Blessing.
Ariel's Blessing, enchantment, 9+ cast, 10-inch range. Until your next start of turn start phase, target friendly unit gains regen 5 up.
Big fan.
I think it's great.
Wood Elves traditionally wear paper armor. There's a lot of light armor in this book. Regen 5 up is huge for them.
I think
for a faction like Wood Elves, or even for your witches there, Alistair, this wouldn't necessarily be unreal in combat, but it just really guarantees you are able to get to combat.
I agree.
I think that's fantastic.
Maybe combined with not that the Dark Elves will ever get access to this, but I totally agree with you.
But you know what I mean. A unit like that, Mr. Fancy Pants, but also the the regen 5+ on something with parry or something, and stubborn, making them a little bit more durable and sticky aroundy is fantastic.
Definitely.
3 out of 3 look great so far.
Vortex. 10+ to cast 15-inch range remains in play as all other vortexes are. 3-inch marker that must be placed within 15-inch, hence the 15-inch range. It is dangerous terrain. It will move D6 in a random direction. Thank God it's not another pillar. Any enemy unit touching it or it moves over suffers 3d6 strength 2 hits with
what is going on?
This is crazy. This whole lore is crazy.
Color me power creep. What is this?
It is strength 2. It is strength 2.
Yeah,
3d6.
and it's random move, but you've got a pretty decent.
It's a watered down Viletide, but in vortex form, right? It's not 6d6. It's only 3d6, and it's probably not gonna crack a dragon in the same way that a spell like Viletide would. That said, AP -1 on anything is still pretty dangerous, and that's a huge damage spike. if you manage to roll high on 3d6.
I mean, 3d6, what? It's 9. On average, it's 9.
Mm.
Strength 2, let's say you're winning on 5s or 6s. Like, you're probably going to get like 2 or 3 through. And then AP 1, that's
and
good.
just keeps going.
Yeah.
And, with these magic vortexes, especially, again, we keep saying in a faction like Wood Elves, if you've got a Warhawk caster running around, you have to be within dispel range of the unit that cast it. So you can just jump in, dump it, and then leave, and then flank people with Fury of Athel Lauren or something. That's really, really cool.
Yeah. It's no pillar, but...
It's not a pillar, but I think magic in this edition, as we've talked about before, when you look at it by spell, oh yeah, it might be okay, but when you consider that if you're rolling 4 dice, which we'll talk about why they're always going to have 4 dice and not any items to give them extra spells, etc., is you might, like you've done it before. In fact, you said it yesterday, Alice, it was like, oh my gosh, I rolled a bad spell because I didn't watch. So far, you're probably doing okay. Like, if you don't get aerials, you don't get spiteful. But because it's like, just keep throwing spells out, who cares? Like, I'll take spiteful all day.
It does feel so far that there's not really a bad choice. So that's 4 extremely solid spells. That includes the signature, so you can swap it out for anything else. It still feels like, I'm sure there will be preferences that you'd look for, but it still feels very, very strong. So Alex, what's
Could it get stronger? Could it get stronger? It can't possibly get stronger though, Alistair. Let's read Durthu's Wrath. It's an assailment spell, 10 plus the cast, so it is quite high. Each model in the fighting rank of a unit engaged with a caster takes an initiative test. Each model that fails suffers D3 strength 4 hits with no armor saves permitted. Tom, what's the initiative of an ogre?
Don't talk to me about it.
What's the initiative of my dwarfs again?
Higher than ogres?
Each model takes D3 strength 4 hits. I think Val said this. This is probably I think people are going to hate this spell. It's going to remove models, but mostly because of the sequencing of that. If you have a 10 line, you're doing 10
checks.
D3, 10 check, but everything is an individual roll.
I think
it's
fittingly
not a
as well, if you take...
Is Linehammer dead?
If you take the model of Durthu, which is a Tree Lord Ancient, I believe, and give him this spell, on top of his stomps and various other things, his base is huge. And if
it's the whole fighting rank.
It's the whole fighting rank.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. It could be on a 25 mil base.
But he's going to absolutely clean up if he can get this off.
That's really cool. Each model, so walk me through the sequencing. Each model would take D3, and if you're assigning those wounds to the unit, you can
it's not by the unit. So the wording of the model here is really specific. You can't destroy an entire unit just by getting one of these casts off.
But you could.
But you do have to basically go down the line. So you go, this guy takes a test. Does he take the hits? If he takes the hits, you roll the hits. He either dies or lives.
Okay.
This guy takes the test.
Still very strong.
Yeah. I think you can fast roll the initiative test probably on a combat unit outside of characters.
Definitely, but you'd then you'd also have to set aside what is fighting, what is in base to base or not, because that's going to have a consideration on the number of attacks that you can put back.
Yeah,
there are a lot of considerations that actually have to go in before you start just picking up 10 dice and rolling them.
Yeah, nice.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, I mean, this is another spell that you could easily roll up and swap out for Swirling Mists if you're fighting against other elves or something similar. So that's good. But take it if you play against dwarves or ogres. Full show. Hidden Pathways. Conveyance. 8+ to cast, 12-inch range. Until your next start of turn subphase, the target friendly unit gains the reserve move special rule and may perform a quick turn, even if normally they could not.
Really good.
That's strong.
Didn't we just discuss?
We talked.
Was it a Warhawk Rider with Spiteful Tyrant? Wouldn't that be really nice if you could just move reserve move is at the end.
Reserve move is as long as you don't march or charge, obviously, but moving 10. Doing whatever you need to do in the movement phase, doing whatever you need to do in the shooting phase, and then moving back 10. Yeah. So you could literally just hop over the top of a forest, do your casting, hop back over the other side of the forest, and suddenly you're out of line of sight again. Yeah. So you
guys really enjoy playing against Avoidance Wood Elves, right?
You love it. I just love it.
Dave took me to task with his Avoidance Prophetess yesterday, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Anything that has reserve move is
Strong.
extraordinarily quick and extraordinarily maneuverable.
So-
Add in something else with arcane urgency, and you're
Just picking on the second part of that spell, may perform a quick turn even if they normally could not. I assume that could go on the dragon, and that dragon can
it could. I feel like
effectively move twice and then 90-degree turn.
You can march
Yeah.
a quick turn.
I feel like the intent is probably more likely for like a unit of Wild Riders or something like that to be
Do they
able
not
to
have
then.
fast cap?
I don't know, but in any case, to be able to reserve move them sort of slightly within the shooting phase after doing whatever you need to do with them, I feel like that's quite strong.
Just on any combat block, even
definitely.
your humble Eternal Guard, just getting some stubborn flankers, that's really strong.
For sure. And then being able to cast that, still get a march distance move, and then turn, and if you have a caster in the block, not suffering the penalties for marching, I feel like that's also very, 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 very strong.
Big.
Last one is Sapping Blight. So it's a hex. It's 9+ to cast. Every single spell in here has been very high values to cast, which I suppose there are lots of the magic items and things and kindreds that boost casting a bit, but still really, really high values to cast. 9+ to cast, 12-inch range. Until the start of your next turn subphase, the enemy unit suffers -D3 to their strength to a minimum of 1. It is also a hex that can be cast on units in combat. Not the first one of these spells that we've seen. There are others that take away strength. There are some that take away toughness. But D3, that's quite large. And being able to cast into combat, very good.
Well, this is just the same as the demons.
The Zench one, yeah.
The Zench transformation one, gives Zench, and but
Strong.
demons can go up. They can do strength, toughness, and weapon skill you choose, and can actually, if it goes above 10, can do 2 characteristics.
But that's because demons are broken. But anyway, go on.
So let's maybe do what we did in the last one and pick a favorite spell.
Can we pick one?
Don't think. Yeah, only one. I don't think there's a bad spell in this. I would almost argue this is now up there with battle magic for consistency. You're never going to go wrong choosing it.
I think not having Fury of Athel Lauren is fantastic, but not having a fireball analogous spell hurts a little bit. But I mean, the utility that's brought with the rest of the lore, huge. Huge. If I was to pick one, probably for consistency's sake, Hidden Pathways, because you'll always have a use. But there's so many ways that you can be like, oh, I really need what was it called? Durith's Wrath against ogres, or I really need Fury of Athel Loren against heavy cav, or I really need Swirling Mists against poison. Fantastic.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go for the Durth's Wrath because I'm just, as you're saying, Chris, like I'm imagining like a massive like tree, like huge imaginary tree whack happening across the whole line.
And you love
but just
whacking.
because, like, as much as people think about Wood Elves as a shooty avoidance army, they're also actually, if I do want to close the gap to you and get into combat with you, I could do that very quickly and get there. So I think this is going to be something that you can catch people off with, and you might even see some units choosing to charge in on top of Warhawks. We don't know, right? We'll see. We'll see.
Wild Riders are so fast anyway. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of a lean into that. For me, I think it's a Swirling Mists. I think it's frankly that is such a powerful signature spell. So there are lots of decent signature spells, but to have such a high quality signature there as just part of the lore, accessible at any time that you need it, I really like that. It's not too much to cast.
I think you're onto something there, and I just want to highlight what you said before, is that maybe we are overvaluing ballistic skill at this stage. You said something quite poignant. A lot of the time you're only hitting on 5s or 6s anyway, so you're taking away 50% of those successes that need to be rerolled. That's really strong.
Yeah, I think it's really impactful. What about you, Chris?
I I think I'm just going to have to go with Ariel's Blessing. I think a 5-up regen is just always good on any
It's
unit.
the ogre
really.
in you, baby.
It is. Is it easier to cast than the ogre one? I can't remember. Is the ogre one 10 up?
Well, isn't it just
No,
scales.
sorry. The ogre is 11 up and you get 5 up.
5 up.
And it's, I think, 9 up and you get 6 up. Yeah.
Now, we should point out, none of us picked the same spell. Just shows how good it is. Or secondly, we did not mention, actually, that you do actually have to purchase an item to get access to this.
Not always. Some of the...
Well, sorry.
Yeah.
In Grand Army, I should point out. Yes, thank you for that. That's a good point. But in Grand Army, which I think most people are probably going to look immediately at this to use, it's an item. It is common. Which I think was freaking out most of the Wood Elf players, going, "Oh my gosh, I can't take Oaken Stave. My life is over." They can still do it. So now they're still one of the best dispelling casters in the game, and they get access to a lore, which is pretty solid. But I don't know, are Treeman Ancients back?
Yeah,
I hope
probably
so.
not. Probably not.
All right, let's move
Anyway.
on.
Yeah.
Well, let's click on the right screen.
Paddy Brown will bring don't you?
Let's not do that. So now we've got, just to, again, we're kind of doing, because we're not doing a really deep dive, we're trying to do a high level thing. I've just done the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Arcane Journal. We will start with the ugly, which is so exactly why these models are on the screen, boys.
So bad.
I kind of like them.
Alex,
I like that retro vibe.
Alex, for this next bit, can you look up the other banner, the Orion's one, for me? Just real quick.
Yeah.
It should be in the notes. So, the reason why the Tapestry of Talzin is on here in the ugly section, so it's 80 points. Boys, what should I be getting if I'm paying 80 points, which is an entire unit, by the way? What should I be getting if I'm taking a banner for 80 points? What kind of ballpark?
The new High Elf banner is, I think, similarly costed, but it gives the entire unit +1 toughness, which that feels great.
That's pretty good. Yep.
Yeah.
So
War banner for 15 points is pretty good too.
Yeah,
So
pretty good.
the thing I'll just jump on here, maybe in its defense, a tiny bit, right?
This better be good.
An 18-inch command range for a BSB is a lot of ground to cover. It's a 36-inch diameter, so it's most of. In fact, it's fully half a 6x4 board.
Can't you just put them on a Warhawk to get that?
No, because it has to be a large target.
Right.
Yeah,
I would
but,
like look.
But
let
me finish.
Okay.
+1 leadership to elves means most of them go to leadership 9, and then the ones that you really want to matter go to leadership 10.
Yep.
And if we could somehow reciprocally apply this to Inspiring Presence, where an Elven Lord is at leadership 10, and it says max 10. Never mind.
Yep.
Never mind. They go to leadership 10.
You forgot that last bit there, Alex.
Yeah, I did.
But it's a good point about the command range. I actually I haven't heard any of the commenters actually catch that out.
Sure.
The BSB.
In terms of restrictions, 80 points? Pretty bad. Why don't we add another restriction in? BSB in Host of Talzin only. Now, it's an 80-point banner. I think only BSBs could really take above 50 points anyway, for the most part.
Most of the time, yeah.
Which means that this is locked to the Talzin army, obviously. But yes, you did.
Shall I read out the Wild Hunt one, Chris?
Can you please start with the points of the Wild Hunt one and then carry on from there?
Banner of the Wild Hunt is 25 points. Banner of the Wild Hunt may only be taken by a model in the Orion's Wild Hunt Army of Infamy. So again, any of the banners in that army.
Yep.
When calculating its combat result, a unit carrying the Banner of the Wild Hunt may claim an additional bonus of +1 combat result point. In addition, the units may re-roll pursuits.
That's pretty good.
Points.
I feel like that's better than +1 leadership, and it's a third of the
Well,
price.
it might win
I
you the
don't-
combat, so
I
you don't
don't
even need
know.
to check the check.
I just don't know. Like you're not thinking avoidance Wood Elves,
I'm
where
clearly not.
ranged casualties and panic checks are
on your
a
high
huge
leadership
deal.
elves with your leadership
Well,
10
no.
general who's probably nearby.
Not
dragon.
necessarily. And I also feel that when you're doing a lot of firing and fleeing, having both the command range and the +1 leadership are going to come hugely in handy. So I agree with you. It's not maybe 80 points worth. I do still think you'll see it. Just
What would you price it as? 25?
I think it sits more in the range of like 45 to 55 as opposed to 80.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a lot still,
Yeah.
but yes.
But the only reason
But
I say
still
that
half
is
off.
because it's comparable, relatively comparable to a lot of the other sort of faction banners that are specific that sit at that point.
Which are all
It's
bad,
not better.
correct.
It's not better than them, and it's probably equally as bad as some of them. I still think that there's a use case for it, though.
I still think that the toughness increase banner on a big unit of Lothern Sea Guard fully decked out is
No,
is
sword
good.
masters. Mate,
Um,
sword masters.
Yep, let's touch upon the other ugly, which is the literal ugly of this book. So, for those who don't know the history behind the Wood Elf Beast Pack, because I didn't know until I had to look them up. These are like mid-80s models or something crazy that.
Oh yeah, the elves are representative of that.
They never got updated. These are the actual models that presumably GW are going to release again when this book comes out.
Dude,
Hopefully
honestly,
at that price
I
point.
love them. Look at the leopards.
£2.50.
Look at the leopards on the left hand,
So,
the bottom left. They look
I know,
fantastic.
yeah,
The
I'll
boars look
point
great.
out
The bear
for-
looks great.
I'll point out for that the animals don't look bad. Like I like the dogs. The leopards aren't awful. The bear
Yeah,
looks like a bear.
yeah.
The pigs look like pigs. It is the elves themselves. It is the elves themselves that are very thematic of like 80s Blood Bowl. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
that pose, that
Hair
leopard
metal.
pose,
Yeah.
in the bottom left. That's super. That's
Look,
super Blood
if
Bowl.
anyone is brave enough to buy these at probably $20
Yeah, they're not
per
£2.
blister
They're
at
not
least.
£2
Yeah, they're not
£2.50
£2.50
each anymore.
They're worth about that.
Paint them up, field them in a list, and watch them get absolutely blown off the table and do nothing. I will love you for it. Please send photos.
I get 13th Warrior vibes.
Definitely.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
the tribesmen
with
coming
the-
out of the
with
cave
the bear-
for the
bear
Ursus
dudes.
Bear
Yeah,
Keeper.
Yeah, and
That's
sorry,
right.
as we touched on earlier, for every you can see the cats, the what are those boars, bears,
They're
boars, yeah?
pigs.
Pigs,
Yeah, pigs,
and
a bear,
the dogs.
and dogs.
For each handler, you can take 1 to 3 of those animals, and for the bear, it's just 1 to 1.
And they're basically strength 3, toughness 3.
Yeah, garbage. The bear is
Chaff.
actually okay, because he's
Yeah, the
tough
bear's not
4.
bad.
I think he's 2 wounds. I think 2 attacks. So
Mm.
there's some play there, but just don't do it.
That's pretty
Well,
bad.
he's 30 points, mate. Because he has to
That's
take the
pretty
keeper.
bad.
Yeah, and the keeper's 11. But let's
Well,
move
yeah,
on.
keeper would be elf. But anyway,
Let's get this model off the screen.
Ooh.
The bad. So Orion's model is not bad. Orion's model is very good. A very iconic Wood
Is
Elf
that the
model.
real Orion's model?
Yeah, that doesn't look
I
like
don't
the
think
real...
so. No, it's just a
Right.
nicely painted Orion that I found. So the bad is his points. So Cetra does see play. Sorry. I think what is he? 500-ish points as well. I want to say. Does anyone know that?
I think he's more, dude.
Yeah. He's got play for a couple of reasons. Orion, he does have some buffs that he can give out. They're not huge. It's worth noting he can be fielded in any Wood Elf army. He doesn't have to be locked to his faction, his little army of infamy, which is good. Look, he's
Cetra's 445. I apologise.
Cetra is
He's
10
cheaper.
points cheaper.
He's 10 points
Yeah.
cheaper.
Look,
The king of all kings is 10 points cheaper.
Yeah, Orion's cute. Definitely, if you're a Wood Elf player, run him, see how he goes. I'm not picturing him gonna. I don't see him in many competitive lists. He's gonna struggle to really make those points worthwhile.
I love seeing him back. I really
100%.
I love seeing him back. I don't think for 455 points he's worth it. I think he should have 100 points shaved off his
Yes.
cost. But I still think like I have the old Wood Elf book, and I was looking through comparing line for line the rules and the stat blocks and everything else. They very much preserved his stat block from 8th, which is something that hasn't happened with anything. The fact, like the inclusion of the hounds, he used to be able to take them as a choice, and now he has to take them as sort of by rote. He's also monstrous infantry, which includes sort of some potential restrictions around units and things. But he used to be able to join units, and I think that's one of the drawbacks where they've really missed a beat here, where he just can't join any unit, even I think if he's the final model remaining. That said, he's got a bolt thrower spear. He's extremely fast. He's movement 9. Yeah. He's so quick. He's frenzied, which is a massive problem. But he's also not skirmish 360 degrees. He's an open order unit. So it's an interesting thing to think about whether or not you could take advantage of his speed to get this powerhouse of a unit across the board. I'm kind of like, I'm pretty sure his spear is only an 18-inch range.
It is.
So you've only got, at movement 9, I don't remember whether he has Swift Stride or not. I don't remember the rules. But if he has...
He does not.
Okay. So it's a 15-inch charge range on him then? So it's like you've got a 3-inch gap in between being able to stop and throw your spear and then being forced to charge because of frenzy. So that kind of feels a little bit incongruous to me, but at the same time, I think it's just lovely to see him back. I think it gives me a lot of hope for some of the other more iconic characters from sort of the Elven armies in particular.
Like Malekith.
I think the vibe is immaculate with this guy. Like the rules are just perfect. It's just the points, guys. If the points get adjusted, he will see more play. Definitely give him a run. Like, try him out. Definitely, he's going to be fun to play. He's just probably not going to.
I think
the frenzy turn on has play.
I think in this day and age of potentially reduced character comps, if you took Orion in the place of a level 4 because you only have 500 points to play, people are just going to come up to you and shake your hand because there's a lot of respect for someone who's willing to take a
magic
Orion.
missiles coming his way.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, but particularly if he, this is not the Games Workshop model. I pulled the Games Workshop model.
Yeah,
it is nowhere near
better model.
This is so much prettier.
I was gonna say,
this is so much prettier.
I just found the best painted one that I could find.
Yes, and it looks gorgeous for those of you listening on an audio medium. It is a really fabulous, iconic. He's holding his arm back to cast a spear. The Games Workshop one has him blowing the horn of Kurnos, and the hounds are sort of Irish wolfhounds as opposed to being sort of wolfy and Gundog.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, Alex, because I can't pull up the notes. Can you pull up the list restrictions for Orion's army? Because this is another bad, unfortunately. So just a high level restrictions, which we went over earlier. This list does not get a level 4 wizard, which is pretty bad. It leans more into the cavalry side of things, which is potentially really cool, particularly with Wood Elves and how they run. But again, no trees, and there's a whole bunch of other restrictions which can be a bit nasty, I think.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, it's, as we say, like 0 to 1 Glade Lord per 1,000, 0 to 1 Shadow Dancer, Spell Singer, or Waste Stalker per 1,000 Glade Captains. Core is 0 to 1 Wild Riders per 1,000 points, Glade Riders, so all mounted in core. Special 0 to 1 Sisters of the Thorn per 1,000. Of course, I don't think they're ever going to see play again. War Dancers, Warhawk Riders, Wild Riders, Wood Elf Beast Packs. Your favorite unit, Chris.
Yep.
Rare 25%, 0 to 1 Wave Watchers per Waste Stalker taken. Great Eagles, Deepwood Scouts, Wild Rangers. The only thing I'm surprised by is normally we kind of see some manipulation of the minimums of like special and rare.
I think Towson has that.
Oh, maybe on the next one. But his special rules in general are Wood Elf Nobles can have talismanic tattoos, and the Spirit of Kurnos, 0 to 1 Glade Riders, Warhawk Riders, or Beast Packs per 1,000 may have Furious Charge and Impetuous special rules at 10 points per unit.
Well, I mean, Impetuous is better than Frenzy.
Yeah. He does also have a, worthy opponent rule similar to Royal Clans, where you nominate somebody, and if you like
Mm.
track the wild hunt, I suppose the
Yeah,
mechanic we're
yeah.
tracking down that person. But I just feel like if he had a 4-up ward save, he'd be like the king of style points. 5-up ward is just
I guess we'll have to see what happens with these ethereal dogs. I mean, if he can nominate someone with a 9-inch move, etc., he can probably track him down pretty well and stay safe.
Like
You know,
18-inch
on the way in.
18-inch march is enough to get you a
Yeah,
lot of
definitely.
places, particularly being
Definitely.
open order.
Give him a
So
reserve move too.
Exactly, and then you're casting in the law. But if he's 455 and we're playing in the realm of 500 points character max,
There
then
will be no spellcasting.
a lot of the time there won't be spellcasting. Yeah, unless but they have spellcasting rare riders, don't they? The Wood Elves,
the
Sisters
Sisters of the Thorn.
Sisters of the Thorn.
But
maybe
again,
this is
they're-
your quick turn target.
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe, but again, so sisters can't choose their spell anymore, which is the big drawback.
Can sisters? They can't draw from this spell lore, can they? The new one.
Not unless they FAQ.
yeah,
Not unless they FAQ to include it.
Because that would be spicy.
Yeah,
Although,
I'm surprised they didn't allow that.
Oh, they're
to be honest.
What, they're level 1s, 2s?
They cast as a level 2.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
based
it'd be
on
quite hard to
stats,
get those
but
spells off, I guess.
They cast up level 2. Anyway,
Yeah.
Guardians.
They're dead, mate.
Yes, Guardians. We've already touched upon it. Look, 18 points base. Realistically, to get that extra rule, you need to pay 19 points. 19 points for a 4-up save elf. Toughness 3, right? That's a bit rough.
Brutal.
I know that they're at high initiative, so they will be swinging first. It is rough. If you give them that 5-up regen spell, which we went over, and maybe you do some movement shenanigans with that reserve move stuff, you could probably give them favourable fights. But for me, 19 points is just too much for.
So I'm gonna disagree, and the only reason that I'm gonna do it is literally because of the games that I played yesterday.
Yeah.
So
Toughness 3 bikinis.
So not even the witches. It was actually the executioners that are more on par with these guys, right? Because they're higher in terms of cost. I think there's sort of 16 points per model. They've got heavy armor and they've got their special weapon. They are weapon skill 5. They are initiative 5 that goes to initiative 6 with elven reflexes. I don't think you can sort of blink too hard at initiative 6 when being charged. That's putting you on par with the bulk of armed forces in the old world in terms of still being able to get your attacks back. And as you point out with the regen save, their armor save plus a regen save, when I had Oakenshield as a ward on the executioners, that worked remarkably well to keep toughness 3, 5-up armor save bodies alive. So I disagree. I think that the Guardians will probably see a bit more play than you'd think. That said, 19-point infantry is still like it's a brave man's game.
I definitely think that you can Death Star these guys into a good unit. It's just unfortunate that you kind of have to do that partly because of the points. I don't really see why some of these units cost as much as they do. I'm sure GW's got some silly Excel spreadsheet somewhere which just says, if you add all these rules up, it equals this many points.
I think it's because leadership and initiative have a higher points toll associated than strength and toughness do. But anyway, Vol's Wrath.
Vol's Wrath. So look, this is just me picking out one of the overcosted items. There are a couple in this book. So this one is a bow. It's 55 points. Not a great start. It's a 32-inch range. It's strength +1. It's AP -2. It's got flaming attacks, magical attacks, multiple wounds 2. Once per game, if you did not move in your last turn, it can be shot like a bolt thrower with through and through. So why is this bad? 55 points on a bow. Bows only get one shot, right? If you give your character in combat a nice sword, the amount of attacks is their attacks characteristic. A bow, you're only really getting one shot off. 55 points for that, it's rough. And also asking you to stand still in order to get the through and through bolt thrower stuff, rough.
I think it's appropriate. I think it's arming a character with a bolt thrower, frankly. And I think because of that, 55 points is appropriate. You pay 80 points to get a bolt thrower for either High Elves or Dark Elves. That is literally just the bolt thrower itself. You're paying 50.
And these guys are what, ballistic skill 7 or something?
Although it's
exactly.
It's only, but the bolt thrower is, what's the strength of the bolt thrower?
I think they're only strength 6.
Okay, well, what's strength +1 on an elf?
On an elf
5
lord,
at
it'll be
best.
strength 5. So again, they're not charging you 80 points, right? For that, and your regular shots are still additional in terms of strength. It's just that you get the through and through rule for when you stand still.
And with the bear
Yeah.
title or whatever it's called, you get the extra. Yeah.
Look,
I
I
think
think
it's a totally weapon.
Alistair just likes this because a wood elf has to stand still. That's why he likes it. He just doesn't want to see them move.
I mean, this is true.
I don't think I'm with you, Chris. I don't think he's going to see play. It's just the token, super expensive weapon. In fact, there's way more expensive ones.
I think I picked
Like
it out
Chaos.
in particular because of the whole combat versus range. So
Yeah.
they're wood elves. They get magical bows. I don't think GW thinks that. Oh, you only get one shot with this. Yeah. Anyway, well, let's move on
Agree to disagree.
to the good stuff, guys.
Finally.
As we touched on, Lore of the Wilds, incredible, right?
Very good.
You can't really go wrong with that lore. So I think it's hosted that Towson can access it. Is it only on the trees? I can't remember exactly. But they get access to it. Orion, I think, has to use that item to get it. And the core
Grand Army,
has to use the item to get it. So Crown of Antlers is one of the best magic items that I saw in the book. It's 35 points. It's Armor Bane 1. Impact hits D3. Impact hits have an AP of 2.
So good.
That looks fantastic.
That's solid. You put that on a Glade Lord, even a Cav one, right? On maybe a Stag or something. That's
Definitely
pretty good.
Stag.
That's pretty good.
You put it on a dragon.
Put it on the
Lord.
dragon. Yeah,
Dragon
that's
Lord.
insane.
You can.
Like you want that extra guarantee that he's going to win a lot of combats and he's going to really hit. You put it on a dragon.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the time, you're banking on the fact that you try and survive a challenge against a dragon to hit them back with multi-wound weapons, and usually that maths out to you surviving on 1 or 2 wounds. This just changes that combat math so much in your favor.
Would Crown of Antlers with the impact hits? I assume that would go off the character's strength,
It
though,
does.
not the dragon.
Yeah. No, it's always going to be the model's strength,
which is where the kindred stuff comes in.
Kindred of the bear,
correct.
for sure.
But
Even a couple of more wounds is good,
Huge.
right?
Yeah.
And
Strength
the
5's still
travesty
fantastic.
is you can take that and Ogre Blade too, if you really wanted to.
Yes.
You
I don't think many of the elf characters end up taking the Ogre Blade with like maximum 3 or 4 attacks.
I think the Wood Elf one sometimes does because was it Netlings or whatever it is? What's that stuff called?
There's
Annoyance of
Netlings.
Yeah. So what's that sub faction of items and buffs called?
Oh,
Sprites.
Because they've got effectively extra magic items that they can take. They have more of an allowance to take the more offensive stuff. Like if you look at a dark elf, like a lord, right? He kind of has to buy his defensive items and then his offensive items. These guys have a little bit more leeway. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas.
Let's move on. Banner of the Wild Hunt. So I picked this out. Look, 25 points for +1 combat res. That's solid, right?
It's War Banner, but it's
War Banner with a little bonus.
With buffs,
but hey, because War Banner exists in Orion's army, you can have two units with +1 combat res.
It's really good.
Yeah.
For 25.
And the rerolling of pursuit rolls.
Yeah, that's
very strong.
Host of the Towson tree build. So I put this in there. I really like the tree stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. It looks so
cool.
fucking good on the table. The models are incredible, right? The new AOS version of these models looks so good.
Ugh.
Do not run that old tree, man, please. It's disgusting. But I think the host of the Towson, the way that list comp works, you can probably get some pretty cool armies coming out of it. Certainly some interesting looking Wood Elves. I really wanted the trees to work in this Arcane Journal, and I think they've pretty much delivered on that, which is nice.
Cool.
And the final bit, which we've kind of already touched on, is the Kindreds. A solid way to beef up characters.
Yeah, and I think there's a banner which also allows them to cast the Mist spell.
Yes,
and it's not single
Swirling
use.
Mist.
Yeah, Swirling Mist. It's power level
3.
2.
No, 3, I think.
As a
Or is that the other one? Sorry.
Sound of the Morning Chill. The Bear of the Sound of the Morning Chill can cast a Swirling Mist spell from Lord Wilds as a bound spell with a power level of 2. So again, if you're in Grand Army and just wanted to include that one consistent spell, level 2, okay, It's not so bad. But I mean, typically against Wood Elves, most people are trying to stay out of the spell range of the Wood Elf Mage who's using the Oaken Stave to roll 3d6 against you on the spell.
Mm.
So you probably
Gonna
actually
get it off anyway.
Yeah, depending on positioning, probably okay.
Hmm. It looks good. The Arcane Journal looks
I
good.
think it's
I
solid.
hope that there's a few different builds that emerge. You know, like Chris is saying with these the tree spirits and stuff like that, and always having a third. Unfortunately, I guess the way that it lands is usually there's an Uber build when you've got a triple way to build a character. If you've got sprites, magic weapons, and kindreds, or magic items and kindreds, usually one thing emerges. But hopefully they've got enough, meat and gravy in there to spice things up.
All right, let's move on.
Okay.
Get your soapbox out.
Let's just quickly get myself set up over here. So
Can I give some preface, Alistair?
You may, and then I'll probably do
Yeah,
a
then
little bit more context setting to correct
Yes,
all the
I
wrong
think so.
things you're going to say. But yeah, go on.
I just want to say what has led us here on this conversation, and you can talk about that, and why the timing of this is important. Because we're having a lot of conversation about what it means to be in the old world right now, and you're going to talk about this a lot, and I think we're going to have a proper hour-long discussion on this topic specifically. But within the community, I think we're at a point now where the question of how we play and how we represent ourselves and the future is never more important than right now. Never more important than right now, because we're a year into the game. Many of us on this podcast have seen the birth of game systems, whether it be X-Wing, Armada,
Stop it.
Legion, whatever it might be. And we've also seen its demise as well. So we've seen the cycles go through and some of the pitfalls which come alongside of that. And I know that the Old World Fanatics were meant to do their version of this last week. I wish they had, because then we could be kind of following on to it. But, we're doing ours now so we can put our voice out there. So, Alistair, please take us away.
So, a touch more context setting, because I'm about to launch into a rant, which may go for sort of 6 or 7 minutes, and I apologize for that in advance. So if you're listening on a podcast medium, you don't want to listen to me proselytize around the fate of the old world and try and inspire you into thinking about things slightly differently, then please skip ahead a couple of minutes until you hear the others going, we distance ourselves from Alistair and don't endorse the things that he's saying. But the gentlemen have been very kind to give me this time. And as Alex has said, I think now is probably the most important time to be talking about exactly the environment and community that we want for the old world. So I suppose I shouldn't delay any longer. Our game is a game where elves and orcs and mustachioed empire generals wage a brutal medieval war using rules that frankly are a bit written like a cursed tome. And skirmishes are the greatest weapon ever invented against friendship. But we're in the midst of a glorious return to a setting so dense with lore that it makes the Silmarillion look like a pamphlet. But with that return comes actually quite a familiar divide to us, one that's quietly shaped the tabletop community for as long as it's exist, and it's the tension between competitive players and hobby-first enthusiasts. So what I'm going to talk about, it's not just about list building versus lore, or whether you paint your goblins before you put them on the table. And I stick my hand up to recognize the hypocrisy of talking about a little bit of this after we've spent the last hour talking about how rules will work, how games will play, etc., etc. But in my opinion, what it's about is about two fundamentally different approaches to the game and how they shape the spaces that we all together share. Competitive play, it can sharpen your skills, it can inspire innovation in lists, and it can build a lot of excitement in the game. But when it becomes the default, or worse, when it becomes the only accepted way to engage in the community, it can alienate the very people who make the game sustainable. And that is, the painters, the storytellers, the casual players, and the socially tentative folk who come along to Warhammer not just to win, but to belong. So before you may dismiss this and skip to the end as just a play style difference, and we'll leave it at that. I think we need to talk about what's really at stake, and that is the community, accessibility, and the long-term health of the hobby itself. And nothing illustrates this problem to me quite like one of the most quietly destructive attitudes in gaming, and that is whack. So whack in the old world, these players are relatively easy to spot, and they're certainly not new.
Sorry, just to butt in,
Go-
for certain people, could you just
Whack.
explain what whack actually
Whack, as is in inverted commas here on the screen, whack is win at all costs. And these are the players who would treat your friendly local game night like it's the finals of the Hunger Games. They're the type of player to spend more time on Reddit looking for rules loopholes than actually painting their minis. And that might be unfair sometimes. But they show up with turbo-optimized lists, emotionally prepared to destroy a 12-year-old who just wanted to see whether his dragon can ride a griffin. And when they win, and Tom is laughing at me because I have been that person and I will stick my hand up to say so. But when they win, they'll tell you in excruciating detail at some volume. They rarely care about theme or story, why a Bretonnian peasant might be charging a Chaos Knight. They care only about efficiency, about squeezing every drop of advantage out of every rules interaction. And the issue is that whack's not just annoying, it's corrosive. Because tabletop gaming is at its core a social activity. It's one part strategy, it's one part storytelling, and it's about 12 parts arguing over whether or not line of sight is blocked by a shrub. And when you let whack dominate that space, you suck the air out of it. New players stop showing up. Casual players feel like they're being punished for not memorizing 300-page rulebooks and 2 associated FAQs. And before you react and tell me that that's not a big deal and it can't possibly be having a big enough impact to care about, think about your own experiences. We, on this call, have seen it time and time again at events here in Sydney where players walk away expressing sentiments like, I never want to play that person again. And in one case, ending up leading a national campaign to ban Wood Elves. It's gotten so bad that there's a hidden culture at events, and we don't have to talk about this really, but there is a hidden culture at events, including the one that we're about to go to, where players are partnering off for arranged grudge matches simply to avoid playing someone who could ruin their day.
In round one, yeah.
In round one. The old world is a game more than any other that thrives on its community. This is the revival of a system that we all thought was dead for good. It's a celebration of narrative, of painting, of modeling, and occasionally mismeasuring your charge by half an inch and ending a friendship. But look at all we've achieved since the game released. Community FAQs, community legacy faction support, a host of community events that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. When whack takes over, the space gets narrower. And suddenly our big, beautiful, weird, welcoming community becomes a tournament bracket with body odor. And look, I get it. I said before, I've potentially been one of these people in the past. Winning feels good. Crushing your enemies, seeing them driven before you, it's not Conan the Barbarian, that's the internet in a nutshell. But when your sense of worth is so tightly wrapped around beating someone at plastic chess with orcs, it doesn't reflect well. It says, I'm not here to play with others. I'm here to prove something to the people who stopped listening to me after turn 1. Compare that to the joy of a supportive tabletop culture where experienced players coach newbies through their first game and people cheer for cool plays even if they're against them. And everyone leaves that table a little happier than when they sat down. And that's the magic of tabletop gaming, and it's the magic of the old world. It's why we show up to events after months of having saved up brownie points with our partners and our kids, with minis in dusty shoeboxes, and a spark of hope in our youthful eyes. Now, often we as a community, we can be really prone to offer the benefit of the doubt. And we might have a bad experience, and as we decompress with our friends, we're told, well, that player's just like that. And hey, they're a competitive player, don't worry about it. As though that's a thorough justification of some of the behavior we've seen. But I want to be super clear. Warhammer has always been a haven for people of all backgrounds and all brains. For neurodivergent folks, for the socially awkward, for those who feel more comfortable explaining why their orc has a top hat than making small talk at the pub. And that's wonderful. games should be places of acceptance where your comfort level, social energy, and personal quirks aren't just allowed, they're embraced. But that doesn't mean, and this is particularly relevant to what we've seen in the last 4 weeks, it doesn't mean we should accept people weaponizing that. It's a tiny fraction of who would, but they have an incredibly outsized impact on our community. And there's a world of difference between needing social grace and refusing to offer any. Claiming, oh, I just don't do the social stuff, while you steamroll someone's lovingly painted army at their very first event and refusing to even crack a smile, that's not difference. That's being a jerk with an excuse. And so it gets worse from there, because the whole mess didn't just spawn from the depths of the Chaos Wastes. Competitive play culture has quietly become the default aspiration in a huge part of the old world community. We've gone from, oh, let's reenact a Desperate Empire Last Stand. It's 200 years ago. Look how important this is. To how can I optimize my MSU core choices for maximum points efficiency? And look, tournaments are great. I love them. Rankings are fine. But when scoring, stat chasing, and performance anxiety becomes the main narrative of a game that is literally based on a fictional world where rats run a global conspiracy, I think we've lost the plot. So ranking systems and scorekeeping might feel like a structure, but in a community that's built on storytelling and mutual creativity, they will do more harm than good. They create a pressure to perform instead of play, to treat every battle like a resume bullet point, and the game becomes less about what's on the table and more about who's gone 19-1. So imagine instead a Warhammer event series where people bring theme lists just to see how they play, where you lose gloriously and still feel like the hero of your own story, and where someone says, you know what, I know this unit sucks. I know this Wood Elf unit is terrible, but I painted it, and it's in my family now. And where you can play a game in the name of fun or lore or spite, but just not for national rankings. I think the old world deserves that, because this game, it's never been just about winning. It's about moments. A lone goblin holding a flank against all odds. A peasant archer killing a chaos lord on a dragon with a lucky shot and getting knighted on the spot. A necromancer miscasting spiritual vortex and deleting half their army, and everyone laughing at that vampire counts player so hard that the game stops for 10 minutes. So what's the solution? We'll talk about this over the next little while. Do we banish the wax? The competitive players, the people who rank themselves at the top, who go to events, people who win harvests, we've seen plenty of that. Do we lock them in a room with nothing but dice and their own self-loathing? I think that's tempting, but I don't think we can. I feel the answer is structure. And I think communities need to build separate spaces where competitive play is encouraged, like grand tournaments, your CanCons, your ShyCons, leagues, perhaps, or, I don't know, designated whack Thunderdomes. And there should be spaces for casual, narrative, or learning games. And the differences between those need to be made starkly clear by event organizers. That way, everyone can pursue their own brand of fun without one group nuking the table for the other. At the end of the day, a game of the old world should be like a good D&D session. It's collaborative, it's surprising, and it's full of laughter. The old world is back. After how long? I don't want to ruin it by pretending that the only fun part is who wins. The real victory is telling stories, coming on podcasts, talking shit, and occasionally blaming the dice for our own terrible decisions. And since my son has just turned up, I think that's where I'm going to stop talking.
Thank you for saying that. I think we've been heading towards this type of discussion for a while now. I want to add 2 points to that. I think everyone is not going to be surprised, given my semi-rant last week about why I think com's important for like the dads out there, coming back to the scene. I think events these days are not really, and why I agree with this idea about structure is important. It's not about the hobbyists versus competitive people anymore. I think most people, including all of us here, left that scene behind a long time ago. I would say it's in the minority around the scene, and why it's critical to have a place where people can go and play. Well, people do want to win, right? Of course, they want to they want to win, but you touched on it, having to actively seek out a grudge match because you might potentially play one of X amount of players is not a healthy place to be. The second part is that, 10, 15 years ago, whatever it might be, most people only had Warhammer competitive scenes to play in. And I'm not advocating for players not to play Old World, right? But I do feel like there are spaces where we're getting people from other scenes, whether it's Ninth Age or other competitive games, and are bringing those expectations into the system that we love and adore and play. And I think it's okay to now say, guys, that's actually not the expectation that we have here. I mean, we're all 10, 15 years older. We all have responsibility at work. We can just call some of this out as well. And quick caveat, shout out to whoever the anonymous poster was on Reddit, basically saying that the old world in Sydney was a really competitive, difficult space for beginners. That's a very niche example. We don't know who it was. But the only thing I took away from that post, as much as people were saying, there are plenty of spaces out there, was someone's gone to the bother of posting on Reddit. Maybe 1 in 10 people will post their opinion online. How many people have set a foot in, potentially gone to one of those events that haven't had guardrails in and gone, actually, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm out.
We've had some responses from tournament organizers in the last little while arguing about, I suppose, comp as part of structure of tournament packs, and it's one of the things that I also wanted to bring up here, in that it takes a little more than, oh, I think everything is fine, when a lot of the feedback that appears to be coming through in Discords, in group chats, on Reddit, appears to be quite the opposite at a significant number of events that are being run, that people are not happy, that you get anecdotal stories, whether they're true or otherwise, of people coming to their first tournament since Warhammer 8th edition has ended and experiencing these really competitive, very well curated armies and the people who know how to play them, and not having any of that guardrail support to protect them from an experience that leaves them going, why have I wasted an entire day? You've just pointed out, we're all adults. Most of us at this point, I think that we're playing Warhammer Fantasy from, the end of that game system. Even the very youngest at that point would be in their mid or late 20s. And the more common age group is probably 35 plus. We're adults. And we should be talking about this in the context of, do you want this community to be exactly the same for the future? Or do you want to start making it friendlier for another generation of Warhammer players to come through? One of the interesting things that I found going to the Western Sydney Wargamers event, and it is no reflection on them, it is entirely a reflection on the community. There are no, I am new to Warhammer Fantasy and I haven't played a Warhammer game before. There is not... There are a couple of people who are, oh, I've collected it in the past, or I've played it in the past, and I'm coming back and I want to play some games against people because it's come back and I'm excited about it. But game stores aren't like they were 10 years ago when Warhammer Fantasy was still a thing.
And they don't exist anymore.
Most of them don't. I went to Exiles Gaming on Sunday, which is a hobby club in the Inner West. It is the only hobby club, well, arguably not the only. There's one that focuses really heavily on Warhammer 40,000, but it is the only multi-system gaming club that exists in the Inner West anymore. I can go into Good Games Town Hall, but what's the likelihood of me being able to find like-minded people in a store like that who sort of are learning or wanting to experience or wanting to get into the game? I just don't think that exists anymore. And I think it's up to us to be advocates for our game and to try and look for opportunities to introduce it. We were talking about this yesterday. Potentially one of the things that we're looking to do in the next little while, maybe just me, is run some events that are catered specifically toward this end, where the interest will certainly not be on who's winning. The interest will be in how many people can we get interested to start building a local community that can have regular events, regular focuses on actually building community and providing feedback, rather than, and again, it is no reflection on the Western Sydney Wargame guys, because they've done an incredible job building their tournament up in a community-focused way since they've done so at about this time last year. But instead of this environment that we seem to be heading into, where rankings are everything, where all you hear about on many again discords and podcasts are, ex player. We make a joke about it with the Chris being the top ranked ogre player in Australia. We do joke about it, but I also feel that that's not the direction this hobby needs to be going on. It is my opinion, but the competitive style approach, the ranking style approach, looking at people and going, that's who we need to role model, that's who we need to look after, and driving competitiveness is the point of the hobby. Like, that to me, it feels really wrong.
I don't want to have a big go at them, but I did notice that when the Masters thing really kicked off, they dived into it thinking that it was 10 years ago, or however long it was, and the old Masters community would just be there and ready to go. And I think from all of the discussions that I saw, they struggled to get the interest that they thought they would have had, because I don't think...
Doesn't really.
Yeah, it's not that people aren't playing the game. I just don't think people are playing it for the same reason that they played it all those years ago. And I think the flow-on effect of that is there really a big competitive scene for this game? Should there really be a big competitive scene? And I'm not saying, as Alex, I guess, touched on earlier, I'm not saying we're here to just roll dice and see what happens, right? We're here to play the games to try and win them. But do I really care if I went 5-0 at an event and then I get a Masters invite and then I get to, try my lists out against the best players in Australia? I know personally I don't care. I feel like a lot of people are in the similar boat. I'm fine with going to those like interesting smaller tournaments where I can still test myself, but I'm not going all out. It's just interesting to see how it's going to function, and whether Masters is going to really kick off next year.
Yeah, I suppose that's why I want to draw a line between what's expected to be highly competitive or not, because you make the point of going to smaller, more interesting tournaments. Anyone can. And in fact, we've seen through some of the points aggregates on the ranking system, there are definitely people out there going to small tournaments with very big, very strong lists, very experienced. They're going out of area. They're going all over the place to effectively win Harvest, and that doesn't feel acceptable as a method of community building. Like,
I do want to jump in because I completely agree with everything you're saying, and maybe take this as a little bit of a devil's advocate thing. I think that you can be the most competitive-minded individual, but also give your opponent the best time that they've ever had on the table. And I think maybe I left this a bit too late because we're 23 minutes into this segment, but I don't want any of our listeners to think, hey, I'm never going to go to an event because I'm afraid of competition. Healthy competition is something that we all, it's a human sort of facet. We play social sports to compete. We do these things to stay fit or sharpen or whatever have you, or just interact. And I don't think that it needs to be like the most separate of Venn diagrams. You can really overlap these two elements and have the best time. Where I think it becomes a problem is when events are allowing it to happen via list construction. And I also want to point out that I have a little bit of an issue with the notion that when someone is frustrated with or has a particularly bad experience, they take it out on the rule set and they start saying things like, well, that can't be a competitive rule set. It wasn't in the design, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, anything can be competitive if you want it to be. If you want to try and sharpen or warp or initiate a particular type of gameplay, that's fine. Just make sure that you're being a good person about it. You don't have to separate the two, right? I'll give an anecdotal experience. Love the 2+ boys. Love them. The first event that I went to basically had no restrictions for them. And as a legacy player, I was playing against monster slaying Bretonians that were 360-degree line of sight and all that kind of stuff. And en masse, right? And I just didn't enjoy that. And so now I would love to build the most competitive ogres roster that I can, but I'm really only going to be taking that to Western Sydney Wargaming events because they tailor to a much more social interaction. That doesn't need to rule out the people that want a bit of competition. That's where the, hey, just be a good person sort of conversation needs to come in. So I just wanted to say, there's if you are competitively minded, that's not, as you said in your intro speech, these games are designed for literally everyone. Wargaming is designed for everyone. If you come from chess and you're like, I really, I have that tacky 4D sort of mentality, go nuts. That's great. Just make sure that you're being a good person. Some of the most amazing games that I've ever played have been the most fun, but also the most nail biting. And that's why I do a podcast with the three of you guys, because I'll never have a bad interaction on the table, and you challenge and stimulate me in ways you couldn't believe. But I just think it's just important, I think, as a gamer and as a social gamer in my sort of my twilight years of my gaming career.
At the ripe old age of 30?
That's right. You need to be able to welcome competitive players. I have no issues with rankings. The issue with rankings comes in when you are having events allow for those hardcore people going to these like 5 people tournaments and just flog. That's just sort of where it becomes.
Yeah, and I think
poor taste.
I think for as far as my gripe with rankings goes, like I appreciate the work that they've done. I think it's really great.
The website has been net positive.
Yeah, I
totally how else agree. How else can I look at Alex's win rate? It brings me joy.
My position on it though is that it's become too much of a focus. And to your point, competitiveness, totally fine. I said as much. But there is a difference between competitiveness and the attitude that is whack, right? That is, I'm going to go. It doesn't matter what experience I have or my opponents have, as long as I win. That's all that matters, and that's that to me.
That's the bad behavior aspect of it.
And so I feel like in order to prevent that, as far as, and it's not just on tournament organizers, it's on us as a community to call out the behaviors. It's on us to make sure that we're acting like adults and we're challenging back and forth and not just accepting that someone might be doing something for reasons that we can't necessarily see at that time. I think it's really necessary for tournament organizers to make it super clear as far as expectations go for their tournaments. What is your expectation in terms of how people behave? And I don't know whether looking at sports is the way to go again and making that a huge part of the victory condition. Maybe it is. We used to use it all the time because we were involved in an environment where there were so many people who would behave badly that it was an absolutely necessary condition. We're not there yet. I don't think the old world is there yet, but I would hate to see it get there.
I think
one, I guess, almost devil's advocate point that I'd like to raise is we have, in some events, resubmits if your list is not, it's too whack.
Yeah, you talked about this last time. Yeah.
Should we also consider a resubmit if your list is too weak? Because let's be honest, there are some guys out there who come into this game and they're not the strongest list builders, and there's a variety of reasons for that. I would almost argue it's equally bad to run a really bad list into an event and give yourself no real opportunity to have a competitive outcome to that game. If you run a particularly weak list, you might be a lovely person to play. If you got no real chance because of how you built your list, is that going to then cause you frustration? You're going to feel bad, and then you're going to have a negative view on the community?
Yeah,
I think that's a really hard thing to to enable, like you can enable the resubmit as a polite thing to do, but if we're talking about fiscal investment and time, a lot of the time people just, they might only buy Wood Elf beast animal packs because they just love those models,
And
I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and I will do it. But yeah, I think I'm not saying it's a problematic approach. I think it's a great and polite approach. Hey, just by the way, this is what you're facing. Would you like to do X, Y, Z as a tournament?
I think a really good
organizer?
example
You just have to understand
that
the
I
fiscal
would, I guess,
investment
touch upon
is fierce.
is we've been to some events that the guys have gone, hey, you need banners to score these extra points. And we've seen lists submitted with no banners, And I'm not saying force them to resubmit. Maybe just tap them on the shoulder and go, hey guys, just so you know, the players pack does say that these missions all require banners for you to score. You don't have to run them, but it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, in fairness, Alex and I have been part of discussions with the 2+ guys where we've looked through lists and we've noticed things like that. Not only have we called those out, but we've also called on the organisers specifically for Western Sydney Wargamers, and they've allowed it for people to look at specific instances like that, or someone's bought a magic item that just doesn't make any sense. That
possible heretic jars.
Exactly that, and we've called those things out, and in fairness, they have, and so I'd like to think that if proper list diligence is being done, if proper reviews and vetting is being done as part of the tournament organisation process, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, but if they are being done, I would like to think that TOs are already doing that as part of just good grace. Whether or not
it really should come from the top end, instead of the bottom.
Whether or not, as Tom said, it's fair ultimately, or even sort of justifiable to then go to them and say, hey, your list is weak for X, Y, and Z reasons. I think that then strays into an environment where, I'm much more comfortable having a structure that is quite clear on expectations than having a really subjective, if you're too strong, if you're too weak, you'll be asked to resubmit, because you have no comparison. You might submit something which you think is perfectly fine, and you get an email from a TO, not that I think this has happened to anyone, but you get an email from a TO saying, hey, your list is too strong, can you resubmit? Like, there's no, well, what is it about my list that's too strong? What rubric are you using to compare it to? Whereas the frameworks like the WSWG guys are using at the moment, where they're playing around with comp structures, where they've used Throne of Skulls, where they're now reducing character comp, I think that's a less subjective way of trying to influence list construction in the first place.
In a positive way.
I do feel, though, they're again, as I said before, I think there needs to be a step beyond that, though. List construction comp is fine, and that gives you a soft entry into, we don't want this tournament to be a style of tournament where we enable players to come in and do the bad behavior things that we've seen happen elsewhere in the community. But I also think it needs to be a little bit more apparent that the purpose, our mission in this event, and maybe this is getting too highbrow. Maybe I'm acting too much like the change manager that I am. But I think there needs to be some sort of mission and purpose when you do sit down to run an event, to say, this is what I want outcome wise. I want my players to have a good time. I want my event to be a success. I want my missions to be interesting. I want everyone to walk away feeling this. And while you can't totally control that, there's definitely room to go, this is absolutely my expectation of players. And if you don't behave to that expectation, if you are the cause of someone's discontent, if you do something that is either against the expectation or standards or rules that we've put in place as a result of, hearing the things from the community, and we want it for this event, then you'll either not be invited back for future events, which I recognize is a pretty drastic step. Or if you fail to correct behavior after this gets called out, that there be, you're not going to get your ranking as a result of this tournament. This is, we're not going to submit your results. You'll be zeroed out, or something along those lines, to really strongly discourage this style of behavior, because it's not. It's not competitiveness. I agree with you, Tom. It's not competitiveness which is the problem. It is the bad actors and the bad behavior which is driven a lot of the time by competitiveness being the aim of the game and the core focal point of our conversation in the community.
Yeah, I won't disagree with you there. I think it's just really important to continuously highlight that at no point would we ever be discouraging someone from turning up to an event.
Absolutely not.
And if anyone,
that's why we're doing this, Tom.
But no, what I'm saying, what I'm really trying to say and highlight over and over again is that, you know, if you are in Sydney and you've had a particularly bad experience or something similar, you know, come to a 2+ event or come to a Western Sydney Wargamers event. I couldn't recommend Western Sydney Wargaming events more. But, you know, I've played games for a very long time. I traveled to America multiple times off the back of, you know, very high placing tournaments here in X-Wing. I do think that it's a slippery slope it's a slippery slope when we start conflating a good list and a very good player with, they're a whack, you know. That's where it becomes dangerous but you know, and I think you really need to introspect. If you've had a bad experience, really make sure that before you sort of raise it, which you should, before you do so, ask yourself, did I have a bad time because of what I brought versus what they brought, or what they brought was a little bit intense? Or were they actually just treating me poorly? Because, you know, you can have an uninteractive game on the tabletop because of the disparity in factions, but they still, and try and recognize, they still might be the nicest person you've ever played against, right? So, you know, we've all walked away from a game being like, oh, that sucked. But they still might have been a joy to play against. So just really make sure that you're ticking the boxes and dotting your I's, you know, and crossing your T's before you start complaining about an individual, because it can have ramifications. It really can. That said, you know, we're all a little bit older now. We should be calling out bad behavior when it takes place, because I've sort of raised this before. I'm a uni student. I don't have a lot of spare time. When I do have a lot of spare time, I usually like to go and play Warhammer with the boys. If I'm spending $50 or $60 on a Western Sydney Wargaming event, which is 100% worthwhile, the investment is incredibly worth it. If I meet people that, you know, for lack of a better term, are assholes, that's going to ruin my Saturday, and I'd rather be at the gym or at work or doing something else with my time, you know? So just check yourself. I would never, ever, ever criticize you for wanting to win a game or trying to optimize a list in a positive way within the bounds of whatever the tournament is allowing you to do. You know, I'm using the sort of the subjective frame of Western Sydney Wargamers, but just don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah. Like, general saltiness is going to happen, right? We're not talking about that. I think it's a testament, again, and we keep banging the drum, and we'll continue to bang the drum about the Western Sydney Wargamers, is it's seen such success because it's in that middle ground of social and competitive play. I think John and the guys even call it, you know, it is a competitive scene, and we see that those hard lists coming out. But you want to be you want to go, oh gosh, I've just drawn Tom and his ogres, and the ogre Death Star is terrible to play against, but I'm going to have a really good time. Like,
terrible on the tabletop, but
yeah, terrible. But I think to be absolutely explicit about what we're talking about here in some capacity, it's things like, if you're playing a game, I'm not saying you have to, you know, coach your opponent into a win or you into a loss. But things, and I was talking about the Star Wars Fenix last week, you know, about like missed opportunities, right? I think there's a scope now for reasonable missed opportunities. If we're playing at Masters, touching on it, absolutely, the expectation is there. You missed your opportunity, too bad. But it's not a good feel if you missed your opportunity, and that's going to stick with you, and your opponent doesn't give it to you, and other things, right? Like, hey mate, did you know you didn't dispel the pillar of one of my 4 pillars of fire that are rolling around the board against whatever list it might be. You don't have to do that all the time, but I think there's just a general expectation, and I think people say, oh, you know, well, it's good for you because you'll not do it again. in quotation marks. Of course you're going to do it again. Like, of course you're going to miss your magic phase or
on your
whatever.
ninth hour of playing Warhammer.
Yeah. Exactly.
The
That's
BO
on
is
there.
just
I-
sinking into the
well,
nostrils.
It's a really good point, and it was funny playing Pete yesterday. Pete Lizardman, Pete for any of those who might be familiar with him, but he is such a beautiful person to play. We had so much fun in the game that we had, and he made there was lots of back and forth. We both made errors in terms of stuff that we then wanted to revisit. We were both really good and really open about it. That's obviously a perfect environment, having sort of met one another before and sort of knowing how relaxed the environment could be. It was also a casual day. It wasn't a competitive day. But at the same time, he then made the point at the end of his game, great guy that he is. He's like, I really just need a rules reference that I want to go through and sit through and step through with my opponent and say, when this happens, these are the steps to make sure I don't forget something and to make sure they don't forget something. And I'm not saying that every person has to do that, because that's a huge amount of mental effort for you to be having to apply that to yourself and to your opponent. But when your opponent gets visibly excited about something and then forgets to do something pretty critical, when your opponent is exhausted and just wanting the game to sort of get there, and again they sort of skip past something and go, oh, actually, I'm sorry, do you mind if we just go back and do that? There are absolutely avenues that anyone as a reasonable adult should be saying, yeah, of course. Now, in that competitive environment, in that Masters environment, in those grand tournaments that we've sort of talked about, is there room for you to reasonably go, no, sorry, we've moved on and the game state is different? Of course there are. But do you have to do that in every tournament?
I actually think I completely disagree. I think I really do disagree. The nature of the way that this game in particular is played is a far more interactive and social experience than a lot of other things that you're going to do. Even if you're playing at a Masters level event, or if you're playing at a Grand Tournament, or whatever the hell you want to call them, I would say this with conviction: there is no room for bad sportsmanship.
Sure, I agree.
And mistakes are going to happen. Now, we're not talking about moving units and overrunning where you should have restrained, or pivoting 90 degrees where you should have stayed straight and facing forward. They're mistakes that you make on the tabletop by virtue of a tactical error. If you've forgotten to do something, or your opponent has forgotten to do something, if you've not been stepping through the game with them because we are playing a social game, you have done something wrong, and you are just as liable as they are for that mistake. I don't think that there's any room in the old world for you to be like, nah, sorry, man, you've missed it.
So I agree with you. I don't necessarily think it's a disagreement at all. My implication was much more around tactical orientation than it was around forgetfulness. I think the point that you raise around it being a social game, I talked to it before. It is totally a social game. You don't go to a Warhammer tournament to play by yourself. Like, it's not how it works. Whether you might not be socially comfortable, or you might not be a person who really has a lot of experience being in big public environments, there are loads of really friendly people, really gorgeous, wonderful, beautiful human beings.
The majority,
who are there,
I would argue.
yeah, who are there to play Warhammer, who are there to have a good time. Yeah, they'll be aiming to win, but at the same time, they're also happy to have a chat. They're happy to talk about what's good for you, what's good for them. And so I think my point has always been, why can't we lean more into ensuring that it is a social experience for everybody, and ensuring that everyone can walk away, if not totally happy with how a game has gone, at least going, that wasn't a waste of 2 hours. Because that is the worst feeling in the world. You pointed it out as a uni student. Alex and I are fathers. Chris is in the same boat as you in terms of time that he has on his weekends. He's got a very full agenda most of the time. None of this is we just have a lot of time to spare, so we're going to tournaments. This is months of investment. Months of either getting hobby stuff ready and painting to put stuff on the table, even if that's new 3D prints and it's Alex's super fast 3-color technique with oil washes at the end. I couldn't miss a dig there.
There's actually a name for that
Yeah.
now. It's called The Method. I found out.
Jesus
I thought I
Christ.
originally.
I think we can probably summarize, I guess, what we're talking about here with this kind of screenshot here, and just talking about the gaming landscape and pointing out that everyone that plays this game fits somewhere on this scale. You might lean one way or the other a little bit. To be honest, everyone's probably more towards the middle a little bit, at least. I think there's so many people that play this game. There's so many different approaches to it. You know, we should just be respectful of everyone that is on this kind of hobby.
Definitely.
And
there is absolutely a condition and an expectation that no matter where you are, you acknowledge that there are people that are different to you, that have different expectations. But you walk into a game, no matter what, with the conviction that you're not going to make life miserable for the person across the table from you.
Yep. Amen.
Yeah, I suppose what I was going to say, Chris, and this is I've been fortunate that I haven't, yet had a game where I've gone, I want to forfeit this right now, right? But I'm definitely of the opinion that if I was into a very mixed match expectation, where things like I missed a spell or something, I'm probably as likely just to say, hey man, let's just call it and let's just go have a beer, right? Because I don't want to have a bad game, and you can have your win and let's just move on. And I'd much rather be walking around the crowd talking to people about their armies, coming and watching.
I'm probably not going to get a beer with you if you do that to me, just letting you know.
Tom, you're forfeiting because I'm yet to beat you on the tabletop.
I just think that the one thing that I want to say again is this gaming landscape has far more overlap than this graph
suggests. Yeah.
Suggests.
Oh yeah.
And I think that, you can be the most social person, but also, hardcore competitive. Being hardcore competitive doesn't make you an asshole inherently. But being hardcore competitive shouldn't also mean that you're arguing line of sight because of that shrub. The competitiveness should come from your tactical decisions and, the way that you've built things and the way that you're interacting with the players pack that's been given to you.
Gotcha.
There's
Gotcha
almost a y-axis, by the way, a y-axis of how often do you attend events or play.
Gotcha has no place as far as I'm concerned in the play style. Like, again, this is not, you're there to compete with your opponent, but you're not there to make life miserable for them. You're not there to spring something on them to get a rush of schadenfreude as they have a miserable experience and you're having a great time. Like it should
just touch upon that point, because I just remembered it just then. There was an edition of this game where magic items was hidden, and it was literally gotcha. And it was frankly, it was awful.
Toxic.
It was so bad, and we've moved on from that.
Yeah, but everything is open now. Pre-measuring, magic items, laws of magic. There is no room for surprise. That doesn't mean that you can't say, I have a unit that moves X amount, and I also have arcane urgency, and then if your opponent fails to connect the dots in terms of how that works and you use that in a tactical way to sort of get behind them in a way that is surprising or unexpected to them, fine. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is I haven't told you the special rule, or I haven't given you the full picture about this unit, and you make a decision based on the assumptions that you have and the information that you've maybe tried to clarify with me. Or if I'm not talking to you about that, if you ask me questions and I say, well, that's not my problem, like you need to look it up. That has absolutely no place.
And the 18-year-old in all of us probably made all those mistakes.
Absolutely we did.
But
I'm 35 years old.
30 plus.
Now.
Yeah.
I'm 35 years
old.
God,
we look good.
Speak for yourself.
But yeah.
But I'm 35 years old. I'm a lot more mature. I'm a lot more mature. I'm a lot wiser.
You've come a long way.
Thank you so much. I'm so much better than I used to be. But yeah, I mean, the me who got a Forge World Vulture and then played Alex's Dark Eldar and wiped him out in a turn after introducing him to this brand new unit first time, which I'm sure he still has flashbacks of, Vietnam era flashbacks of. That's not the sort of person I am anymore. And if I can change from that person, I feel like
trust me, guys. If Alistair can change,
anybody can change.
Anybody can change.
Thank you, gentlemen. Hence why I'm so passionate about this. But anyway,
Alex, do you want to talk to this last little bit here about this chat?
Yes, after I finish my snack.
It's 11:20 at night, Alex.
Okay, I'm good to go. I'm good to go. So I think we're leading up to this, right? And Alistair, you touched on it.
Yeah.
It's labeling expectations more than anything else on this. And after we've gone and we're speaking for almost an hour on this, I think what we've put here is almost too simplified, because we put social Warhammer events, extra time in rounds, scores include multiple things, reasonable missed opportunities allowed, versus GT events, which is your more competitive scene. I think it's almost like TO organizers can have a little blurb at the start of the TO pack to say, these are the expectations that we have for you coming to the event. You paid your $50, so is the other guy that's paid the $50. Everyone's paying their army to this point. We're going to eliminate feels bad, because I think we're going to come back to this point. My overarching belief is that the competitive players, even though they're in the minority, are still going to come to the event, right? If we literally tell these guys, hey, you are allowed takebacks and you are allowed missed opportunities within reason, right? Like you can't be taking back things every 2 seconds in that. But I would say the more skilled players often, and we've touched on this before, are probably winning the game anyway. So you don't need to go that extra step to say you missed that, or you did this, and we're going for the 20-0 to win. And the style of the lists are changing. We know that through the scene, but I'm now a firm believer that we should be setting that expectation beforehand, and equally for those guys as well who do want to have that competitive mindset where they can say, hey, Shirecon, whatever it is, this is a 5-game competitive expectation event. GT, whatever it might be. You're expected to play to time. Missed opportunities are missed opportunities. And if one of us seems... I know, Tony, you got that. But the point being is that I feel like if you don't set the expectation, then someone's always losing.
Totally
and
agree.
if your TO... Like, if I'm sitting there at the event and I go, you know what, man? I'm actually going to get the TO to get a ruling on this, because I don't think the game state has changed. But the TO might come from that same competitive mindset. You're getting double whammied on that. Whereas I feel like if we just set the scene, these are the expectations, and then people can attend the events, vote with their feet. Hell, they might even turn around and say, I've been to enough social events. I want to give my hand at one of those more competitive events. And I guarantee you, the more competitive players are still going to have a good time.
I agree. And I mean, it's not to say that event packs don't have elements of this already. Most event packs have something around sportsmanship, around the sort of behavior that they want to see, collaborate on outcomes in terms of rules disputes. TOs might have final say, behave like adults functionally. But I do feel it still needs to be more explicit than that, because shockingly, many adults who still come along to these games don't behave like adults. So I feel like it needs to be clear that the behaviors that are desired are laid out, that the things that they don't want to see are also extremely clear, but it needs to be at the level of the players pack so that players can make a decision around, is this for me? Do I feel like this is a social environment? Do I feel like going and being social at this sort of event? Or is it an event where I really want to lock in? I really want to play at the very bleeding edge of what's competitive, and I'm going to go and prefer to do that event instead. And there will be overlap. There will be some events that allow for a bleed in between and allow for a little bit more give and take when it comes to rules, but is certainly very engaged in terms of what you should know and what you shouldn't otherwise. But that's fine. That's up to the tournament organizers to do so. but it needs to be more than it is right now, and it needs to do that for the sake of community building. And beyond that, I also, I suppose we should move on because we're nearly at 2 hours. But I also I want to flag that there is a responsibility, and there are many places trying to do this sort of piecemeal. But I do think it's the responsibility of us as a community to try and ensure that there are players other than the existing player base who are actually feeling okay to approach the old world. It is an old system with a lot of old models that are quite expensive to get into. So fully expecting that someone's going to come to a 2,000 point tournament who's never done a war game before, or who's picked up an army cheap from somewhere, and then has to,
and then you wind blast them off the table.
Separate issue. But if you're going into that and going, well, every event is 2,000 points, it really limits who can be involved. And full props to guys like those at Exiles, like the 2+ boys who are trying to run really short form regular events that are sort of focused on trying new things in community. But, you know, particularly Exiles and other organizations that are like them, which are local community gaming groups, there's a big opportunity to take advantage of those. And one of the things that I am committed to after the experience that I had yesterday is absolutely trying to take advantage of that, because I'd love to have this game still exist in, 10 years time, when my son might be interested in actually thinking about playing the game. He might be a sport person, God forbid, but if he does choose to do this, I'd love to have a community that is welcoming, that is open, that is comfortable, rather than a community that allowed for people like me 15, 20 years ago, who would come in, play some poor chump in 40k, I roll him ice cold, and walk away with a $20 voucher to a Warhammer store. So, there's an awful lot of responsibility, it feels like, in being part of this community and having a voice for it.
And speaking of that responsibility, maybe just before we move on, is, really hearkening in on this, and apologies that this has gone on for an hour, but it is a very, very, very important issue. Check yourself when you're playing. If you're on the receiving end, and you're comfortable enough, call a spade and call out the bad behavior when you experience it. And if you're not comfortable enough, because, that's totally fine as well. It's quite a daunting thing to confront someone. Reach out to someone that or that, the TO, or even one of us. We're more than happy to build an inclusive environment. That's all we want to do, right?
Alistair will personally fight them for you.
No.
The days of my days of brawling at the table are long past, Chris. But I think that's a fabulous point for us to finish this discussion on, Tom. Unless there's anything else you want to add to it.
Let's move on to fun things.
And wear deodorant if you don't have an allergic reaction.
God,
that's mandatory.
That is also unacceptable. Gone are the days where we would spray deodorant into stinky rooms. Wear some.
Remember
You're an
that
adult.
used to happen? That used to literally happen.
I know it did.
All right. Apparently, I'm the hobby princess on this channel now.
What, Chris?
I know.
What is happening?
Chris, we're going in the right direction though. So we've switched the hobby,
Chris,
everybody.
Chris, when are you starting Wood Elves, man? Is that next week?
When I order my $2.50 animal packs and they come in the mail, then I'll jump fully on the Wood Elves. So what am I doing? I am edging closer and closer to actual old world content here, and I'm as shocked as you are.
This is old world, surely it is.
Oh, not
please.
No, don't say it. Do not say it, Chris.
That's 3 strikes in a row.
Don't say.
What am I doing?
There will not be.
What am I doing with Lizardman in my 3D printer? Well, at the start of this episode, or if you've seen the thumbnail, there is a Warhammer 4th edition RPG, like role-playing system, basically. There is old world content coming out for that. I promise you, I will run a campaign in that in the future. However,
can we do that? Can you run that for us?
Let's chat. But right now, my current group, and I've started this preparation months and months and months ago. I bought the Lustria book. So this is for actual fantasy, the old 8th ed setting. I bought the Lustria book. I'm writing a campaign in the Lustria book, and they need monsters to fight. So I bought the one-page rules Lizardmen. The sculpts are honestly
They're so
incredible.
good.
They are
Yeah.
so good. I have scaled these slightly down. So these are, I think, 93-ish%, I think. Because if you print them at the regular size, they're actually quite large. The intention is I'm going to use them for this RPG. I'm going to test out a Lizardman scheme using this. If I like it enough,
man.
I've got all the models. I can just roll them into Old World, right? And give that a go. So that's my hobby. I've been printing them. I bought contrast paints to paint them. So I'm going to try. I'm going to try Slap Chop, and in particular, with Lizardmen, their kind of chest is light usually. So the intention is do the classic Slap Chop, and then go a little bit harder on the dry brush around the chest. Make it a bit more like bright and white, so that when I go through with the contrast paints, it should, in theory, blend nicely together and make their chest stand out. So that's the plan here.
Very good.
I'd put a drop of yellow or something into that white. I think now Slap Chop's moved past plain white, and it's now the new
Colours
fangled
and
thing.
stuff.
Yeah, well, it just works a bit better, because otherwise, depending on the contrast paint, the white can show through still. So if you soften that color just a bit with a drop of yellow in the white, or a drop of blue, or if it were me, I'd be doing purples or something, or
Classic,
pinks or something like that. Yeah, just to put it out there. But I think that's generally where you're going. You could try one with just like hard Zenithal, right?
Yeah, I mean the great thing with
as well, without the dry brush.
owning these 3D printed models is I can just print up another guy, right? So
Yeah.
I will.
And you're doing oil wash, of course, right, Chris?
Let's one new method at a time. Thank you. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Any Lizardmen players out there, please do check out the old one-page rules models.
Chris,
yes?
You could do the sponge.
I could do the sponge.
You could try the sponge.
Oh, God.
Let's just get some paint on them first, Alex, and we'll work our way from there.
Right, I'll do the sponge.
All right, moving on. Alistair.
Right. So forgive the confusing overlap, but I didn't feel there was a huge amount of point in zooming in too closely. So yeah, my hobby in terms of painting hasn't really gone anywhere, but I did get the opportunity, which was really exciting for me, to get my Dark Elves out, get them on the board, and play a couple of games versus our friend and supporter Silver Dave and Pete. As I mentioned before, Lizardman Pete, Prophetess Sotek, for those of you on Discord. Both
good bloke. Both good blokes.
Both
I
fabulous
hope you let him
people.
win if he's a Patreon supporter. You have to do that, man.
No, I definitely didn't let him win. He won on his own. But it was fabulous to get to play. This is the list that I was playing, the list that I'm going to bring to Oldhammer. They performed, which was really, really nice. Two quite good unexpected games. My game versus Pete, the Witches actually got the opportunity after I flew them 24 inches in first turn with Steed of Shadows.
Sorry, just for the listeners' benefit, can you just give us a really high level overview of your list?
Sure. No, because we're not releasing things yet. But for those,
but also you were Dave's first game of the old world too.
I was, and I terror checked his Baron and Pegasus mob straight off the board, because you can't use immune to psychology when you're in a unit that doesn't also have immune to psychology. So Dave loved that. And has definitely
and Matt's dragon.
Definitely
Matt's dragon.
remembered. Well, it's just dragons, right? Yeah, it was lovely to play against them both. Pete was trying out the Slan builds, so fortunately
Legacy as well.
Legacy as well. So all renegades for the pair of us. Yeah. But he was trying out the Slan builds. He played Wand of Jet versus Dave, and then took a slightly different build versus me, which was more focused on consistency. He's very conscious, gorgeous human being that he is. He's very conscious on, he doesn't want to play too successful a list, lest people get really cranky at Renegades and ban them. And so he's trying to tread this fine line between playing something that's nice and strong and powerful, but also not too much. So I didn't play against that, but it was nice to have a half day out. It was two games over about 5.5, 6 hours at Exiles Gaming in Marrickville. If anyone is in the Inner West, I will give Exiles a plug. I'm not sponsored by them, but I very much believe in their mission as far as a hobby club goes. They're a sort of open by demand hobbies club. They have a cover, so it's $20 to basically play there, but that's $20 to do things for the whole day, to use all of their terrain, to get access to their boards, to get access to their book library as well. They have a huge RPG book library. It's a super worthwhile investment to go, and if you can get a couple of friends together to book in with Conan. Conan is usually the face and the administrator of the group, but yeah, huge plug for them. It was a fabulous day. It was really nice to get everything out on the board and get some really good learnings that I'm going to take into Winter Warfare, particularly with how I'm supposed to be playing my witches. But yeah, that's me, and I think that might be hobby for all of us. Unless Alex, you want to give us an update on the demons?
I've printed all of the Nurgle stuff, so I should have an update on the next rotation of this as to how they're going. I did get my horrors somewhat printed and painted, and I'm not at all happy with them.
Oh no!
So I will be reprinting them and repainting them.
Oh dear!
Because they look currently more like a Slanesh demon than they would.
On the bright
as the
side,
HP
at least you didn't spend $160 on 2 boxes of them, and now are having to either strip paint directly off the plastic in order to preserve your investment. You can just print them.
So there you go. Going wild color themes in this, age does sometimes not go to plan.
Amazing.
So that is the benefit of having a 3D printer, is just do it again.
Definitely. All right.
Yeah. My hobby has been federal constitutional law, Australian administrative law, and introduction to property and commercial law.
That sounds pretty spicy.
But
wow.
In terms of a hobby update from myself, I do want to say that Ratchet Iron Blaster. Once exams are finished, I actually plan to do the other half of the Iron Blaster as a hobby video for Bone and stuff like that. So I hope you guys will enjoy it. I'm sort of investing in ways to make it look as good as it can with an iPhone 13 Pro Max. But yeah, hopefully that'll be. I mean, you guys have put some unbelievable hobby videos out, so hopefully I can match the quality there.
Look,
and my nasally deep voice can provide some commentary over the top.
Look,
but yeah, it'll be cool.
Look forward to that video sometime in late 2026.
Don't say that.
So
late June, early July.
We're at 2 hours and 7 minutes, and I think that's where we're going to end. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for the wonderful conversation this evening. I think it's an important one for us to have had. If you made it through all 2 hours and now nearly 8 minutes, thank you so much, viewer or listener.
We're going to start losing patrons soon.
We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. On the subject of patrons, if you'd like to help keep the podcast going, you will find the link to our Patreon. It is one small contribution every month. You'll get your name on our list of supporters, and a big thank you from us as we keep this conversation going. And hopefully we can, as I give into the pressure of hosting events over the next little while, we can start offering some bonuses to our patrons as far as that goes as well. Thank you, 25 Creative, for all the things that you've done for us. If you'd like some graphic design work, by all means, head over and check them out as well. Otherwise, that's where we'll end. That's where we'll wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us, as always. Episode 5 of the Old World Behemoths podcast. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you on the next one.
Going strong. Take care.
See ya.